I did something kind of silly before I started this live on YouTube. I should start more excitingly. Okay. The Agentic Self. Welcome to the Agentic Self podcast, where we don't have the answers and we'll find them together. Better? Does that sound like an exciting intro? I think it does. I'm working on being more engaging and less sad. There's too many reasons to be sad, but there's a lot more reasons to be happy and excited and engaged in all things that are good around you, whether it's the sun coming up, that are growing, the wildlife that you can see, the connections that you can make in your day. Sometimes we need to focus on those things to combat the difficult. So this is my first, this is the first time I've recorded a podcast live. I've never done this before, but it makes sense to me, especially given what my podcast is about, which is agency and self-authorship and finding that authentic version of you that you would like to show up more often every day than some of the other what I like to call cast of characters within that sometimes also shows up. And sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes we don't know that cast of characters has shown up and we're outside of our authentic self and we're in something else. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And the hope is that if I do live, it kind of forces Patricia, me, myself, and I to show up authentically in the moment, with people. It's about my own courage to do so. So really, whatever I'm creating, I have learned in this podcasting journey, which I'm only just beginning. I haven't had my first guest on yet. I'm learning to speak in public and speak live and come up with value really for people, because what is for myself, because what is the point in coming on here and rambling or ranting or something that's not productive? I'm hoping to add value. That's my wish, is to add value to people's lives. And part of adding value, I think, is sharing what other people have taught me. And I am someone who thinks that I know what I know because others have been willing to teach me. And also book knowledge. I just went live on Substack, which is where I do publish a lot of my writing. Since January, I've been trying to publish more, write more, put my work out there, my thoughts, or creative writing, fiction, truth, just a mix, a little bit of poetry, but the point is to just capture it and share it in the moment. So that's been fun. That's part of finding my own characters, because a lot of times I do like to hide, and the writing and showing up consistently is helping with that. Podcasting is showing I'll show up, but then when life can become challenging, I may not show up, which is a choice. We've had a lot going on in our family over the last month, and some travel and different priorities. I am circling back to the podcast and paying a little more attention to it again. And wanting to make longer form content. So going back to the why of doing the live on YouTube is why I thought it made sense, is One, because I'm practicing being in the present moment and being authentic, not reading from a script. I do have some notes that will help me. There's some parts I need to read because I want it to land for people. So it's showing up, adding value, and also practicing myself, speaking, and the recording. So why waste time recording and editing? Like, yes, this will be edited. That's the point of recording live while in my podcasting studio. So I have an app that I use, Riverside Studio. And today I learned how to set up Riverside Studio so it is running through YouTube. So when I go live on YouTube, Riverside is actually recording this, and I'll be able to edit it from there. So not only am I getting like my bang for my buck of like going live on YouTube, so offering free content for people when I get to the good stuff later. I'm just yammering right now, but we'll get to the good stuff later. Free tools for people and things for people to think about, some thought exercises. So get a pen, because I'm not just doing this for myself. Yes, that's the number one reason I'm creating now. As of January 1st, 2026, promise to myself is to be creating, and to be creating in public, publishing in public. And why not live? Why not live? I think that's more fun. It's more interesting. So we're doing that today. And one of the reasons, catalysts, which I'm not particularly interested in getting into, but if we reflect on what the catalyst is for action, any action that we take, it's, for me, as somebody who studies behavior, I'm a behavior scientist. Let's understand the cause and effect. So what was it that drove me to decide today I'm going to record the podcast live? Today I'm going to hit live record. I'm going to pre-plan it and set the time and actually tell people I'm doing it. Now, granted, I just told people this afternoon, so most people probably don't have time to just jump on at 5 o'clock to listen. That's a pattern of Patty's. She likes to set herself up for failure, so not too many people show up. But maybe a few people will. But we're interrupting that pattern, that legacy program, that legacy code that Patty operates. And I do not like being called Patty, but it's like an alter ego of mine. The Patty who hides, the Patty who doesn't want to show up. And we'll get into a few of those cast of characters later, because you may also have a Patty within. You may have, oh no, people are saying, oh no, not me. But we do. We have these different characters within us that we play. I'm a private practice psychotherapist. I'm a consultant for workplaces. I'm a coach, as in a brain coach, as in neuroscience, as in your central nervous system, brainstem, fight, flight, freeze, fawning, your conditioning, your programming, your legacy codes. How do we recognize those, identify those, interrupt those, and then rewrite the code? That's my favorite work, is that work. So and now I've lost my train of thought of why that's why I'm showing up here, is to be as authentic as I can, to lead, in a way that I teach, the way I show up in my family every day, and, and share some of those, like I said, cast of characters within me. And the Patty, going back to the Patty character, yeah, she's well, I'm not going to tell you too much about her, because I'm going to, just ask that, you stay tuned, or you come back when you have time and re-listen to this, or come back to the podcast, subscribe to the Agentic Self podcast on Spotify. also on Substack. I'm writing there, also called the Agentic Self. And, you can get to learn a little bit about the language, because if you don't really speak the language, and I'm going to try and keep it really simple because I've been given that feedback that I do complicate things. Oh, shocker. Shocker. I complicate things. I'm working with a colleague co-creating a co-facilitation experience. And we were meeting a couple days ago, and I was describing what I was doing and how I realized that what I was doing was really, really complicated and, kind of over the top. And she just went in to do a little impression of me and the over functioning. And it's like this, over functioning, complicating, and self saboteur. So that's a character that I have within me that shows up. So you got to kind of know the signs, right? When these characters show up in your story. That's kind of what the podcast is going to be about today. We've been talking about connection. That's what the podcast is about, is agency. So we have to kind of connect to that authentic version of us. We have to find that version, because remember, there's a lot of characters as well. And so I really do wish that you won't just listen to this podcast. You won't just watch it and send it to your friends. And I want you to actually get out a pen, piece of paper. We're going to build on these podcasts. We're going to start from scratch for how to connect into our selves better, more authentically. And from there, we connect into all others. We're relational beings. So that's how we make meaning. That's how we, live our lives, is with other people. So we kind of need to understand a little bit about the science, I would say, and the art, because it is a science and an art, right, of connection. So this is one of the things about podcasting live, is like, who wants to sit and listen to ramblings? A lot of us want to just get to the information, and like, that's available. Like, if you want to get to the information, like, go do that, right? Like go do that. Whatever you're looking for, go get that information, go get that answer you're seeking. This is not that. This is going to be like, a slow school. We're going to learn to slow down. We're going to learn to like pause. We're going to learn to not perfect. We're going to learn to be learners. Learners. What's it like to be a learner and not a knower? Do you remember when you were a learner? We kind of grow up and become experts in our field, and then we keep doing the expert things. And then, like, a lot of times we're parents and we have to know, like, what are we teaching them? So we're the experts there. And, we sit back and we look at what's going on in the world, and we're kind of experts on what we think is going on and what we think should happen. So where and what is the value of mystery, creativity, unlearning, unknowing, certainty? Uncertainty. What? No, there's entire industries built on engineering the certainty out of life, And how do they do that? They tell you who you are. Like, you've got too many wrinkles, you don't have the latest and greatest fashion. You don't have the right amount of money in your bank account, or like, I don't know, whatever it is. You don't volunteer enough. You don't give back enough. Like, the world will tell you who you are, and maybe you're doing enough. But if we listen to what the world tells you, which is pretty noisy. There's a lot of signals coming at people. And a lot of us believe them. A lot of those signals came before we even knew they were coming. Experts will tell you that violence that you watch doesn't impact how your brain works. Mm. You'll find experts everywhere and everything. So you have to kind of be your expert. I'd say that's the first lesson I've learned, is that the first lesson people have taught me is that they are the experts on themselves. And that's like a common sense thing, right? They know what they need. They know what they don't need. They know what they want. They know what they don't want. They perhaps know where they're going. They have those answers. What they might not have is clarity on them because there's so much noise in the world keeping them from that signal, that authentic voice. So, okay, I can feel myself kind of sinking into like the sadness of us all struggling to have connection and struggling to hear the signal, right? Because that's kind of the issue, is that we're not hearing the signals that we need to hear because of the noise that's around us, whether that's sound coming in, or what we're watching, or the busyness and the going and the fastness, the speed of our lives today. So with all of that that's going around us, my work is kind of to invite people into the present moment, kind of like into the center of the storm, into the center of the chaos. Well, everything's kind of going on around you. How can we be in our bodies to feel? How can we hear the thoughts that we need to hear? How can we hear what our heart is telling us? What are the important signals? So that's kind of my work, is turning down the volume of what I like to call the old records, like the legacy programs, turning the volume down on that so that we can turn the volume up on what's authentic and what's real for people. So, and not been a program of somebody else's. So we'll get into that a little bit in the podcast today. That's what we're talking about. I do have some notes. Yes. Give some notes. I really hope the sound is good. I don't know if the sound is good, but I'm taking a deep breath of stress. So in real time, that was a stress sigh, because I have recorded, like I've struggled with the tech, right? So, and because I'm recording through Riverside, which is linked to YouTube, I don't even know if there's anybody watching, but I don't think that there is. And that's not the point, but it would be nice to know if people can hear me. But we're just going to carry on, because you know what? Practice is what I'm here to do. I'm not here to be perfect. This is practice. And that's what happened last time when it didn't get recorded. It was really good practice. And then when I went back the next time, I really liked what I did, like a lot better the second time around. But I don't really have time to do a whole lot of practicing. So I just kind of want to get into it, get the information out there, show the journey, show the imperfection, show the cast of characters who've shown up today to help you find your cast of characters. Okay. So what are we doing? We're going to... Okay, I already suggested to get a pen. So one of the foundational things about the Agentic Self podcast, the YouTube channel, is about sharing a bit about my journey, sharing a bit about the science that I know from my professional Patricia. And really, it's not clinical. I'm not sharing clinical advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm inviting people kind of on a journey into themselves, not so much, here's the right way. It's like, here's what you can look at to help you and inspire. So it's an idea, a notion that, you as the observer of this podcast, of this video, of this live, of me, being vulnerable in recording this and doing this personal project of a podcast, that might inspire you. And perhaps with my vulnerability, that will inspire and ignite something in you to take action for something more positive, more healthy, more loving, more kind, more whatever it is that you need. Because again, going back to you, the author of your life, you know what you need. I don't know what you need. Nobody actually knows. Look at this popped collar. Look at this. Popping the collar. My mom always did that. I never did the popped collar, but I like the popped collar. I think it looks good. Anyway, okay. Sorry. Is that okay that I do these things live on YouTube? Look, my little self asking permission. Is it okay? Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So get a pen, get a little bit of paper so you can write some of these things down, because we're going to go over the 4 C's of connection. And the 4 C's of connection are just something that I've created to make it catchy. The 4 C's of connection. Yes. What are the 4 C's of connection? So we're going to go over that, which would be cool if you stayed for. Yes, or came back. Remember, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. Yes, Spotify. So do that. Subscribe free, because it's all free, right? This is part of also giving back. Like, I get to share some of the stuff I've created for free for you to decide, yeah, I like that. I'm going to try that. Yeah, I'm going to use that one. Or hell no, I'm not using that. I don't like that. Not for me. I celebrate all of that. Just like a lot of stuff isn't for me either. So we're going to go over the 4 C's, and I'm going to talk a little bit about connection. I hope this audio is good too. I keep moving away from the mic, so I don't know how sensitive it is to pick it up. One of the things I think is important for us all to know about connection, which I talked about in the first podcast, is that we need it to survive. And a lot of us don't really want that to be the case. If you have ever heard anyone say, I don't need anyone else, or I'm a self-made woman or a self-made man, that sort of thing. A lot of times, we do like to think of ourselves as independent, and we have had to struggle and survive, and we are responsible at the end of the day. And we also are still here because of connection. We needed to be in connection with those who brought us into the world to feed us, to nurture us, to create an environment where we could survive, even though it may have been very difficult. We're not really going to get into any of that, because that's one of the things I'm monitoring. Is as a therapist, I can get into heavy clinical stuff. And this is not that. And I am just gently reminding myself of that, because I do a lot of the heavy clinical stuff, and I'm moving away. The podcast is supposed to be more light and fun, more coaching focused. So if you're into light and fun, if you're into tools you can use, if you're into more stories of courage and connection and love and lightheartedness and a little bit about fear and avoidance. But if you're mostly into fun and connection and mapping and taking control of your own life, this is the podcast for you. This is the channel for you. I already told you about why I'm recording this live, the efficiency of it, the courage of it, the practicing in public, the being authentic, the being unscripted, and just practicing that. What does that look like? What does that feel like? It does not feel good. You know what? Because it's good, but it's also at the same time challenging for me because one, also menopause. So turning 50, and I forget, and I hope you don't notice. Sometimes I forget what I was talking about, and then I end up circling back to it because my brain remembers later. So I hope I'll remember later some of the things that I wanted to say. I already talked about the author, the authentic self, that part of you that knows the truth, right? Is maybe bearing witness to your actions, what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're not doing, what you're not saying. It's aware of the promises you keep to yourself. It's aware of the promises you don't keep to yourself. And so the authentic self is the self we want to really connect into. And I'm going to kind of go through something just to help kind of prime the pump and spark your curiosity and wondering. Okay. So the wondering, if you get out your pen, the wondering is about what kind of characters might be within you. And that might sound really kind of far out and strange, but if any of you know anything about archetypes, you might want to just skip ahead because you already know about archetypes. But I want to start with connection. Like the grounding of connection is to actually meet some of those characters within yourself who are writing the story sometimes. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So you can't know that until you meet them. And if you had told me this 20 years ago, I would have thought that was silly. But now it makes more sense because once you meet those parts of you, you can't really unmeet them. So I guess that's a bit of a warning right now. If you don't want to meet some of these characters that could be writing some of your story, if you don't want to meet them, you might want to just not be here for the next little like 5 minutes. I was going to make this podcast kind of short. I was going to make it about an hour because my son is home from Quebec. He's working on the HMCS Toronto and Montreal, I think. Which is so interesting because he's working on these Navy ships. And part of my work is working with some of the military who are on those ships. And I think how cool is it that he's there working on these ships. And I work with the members who work on the ships. Anyway, that's just a little cool thing that I think is cool. So when we're talking about connection to self and agency, so deciding what we want, making a plan and taking action, we know that there's parts of us that maybe don't want to do that. The character in me that says, yes, do the live, create your own show, talk to people who want to hear, put yourself out there. It's going to be fun, right? It's going to be fun. There's that version. There's so many opportunities for great stories and connection and creating a legacy of awesome courage stories, like a library for your kids. Like, how cool is that? Like, because I'm not going to be here forever. So anyway, that's part of why I'm doing it. Oh, I just remembered one of the things I didn't finish saying earlier. Why I decided to go live. I started to talk and then didn't get to the answer. I just remembered now that I didn't tell you why I decided to do the live podcast today. it is because life is short. It is because someone in our community passed away pretty quickly, unexpectedly. And it's just a stark reminder that every moment, every day, every opportunity to connect with yourself and nature and those that you are here with, take the opportunity, lift your head up from the screen, leave the house, take the vacation, take the days off, do the things, because we don't know. And I know we all know that. I get that. You know that. I know that. But honestly, a practice of gratitude every single day and waking up and having a conversation or prayer or meditation, whatever it is, of gratitude, we know the neuroscience of that it changes the brain. We know you look for more things that are beautiful when you set your mind to it. The thalamus is the part of the brain that does that. So engage your thalamus and tell it what you want it to look for. Look for good, look for love, look for connection, look for authentic, real connection. Look for listening to your heart, because you don't know how much time you got left. And because that's the right thing to do. Why don't we want to live in love? Don't we want to live in love? Dramatic pause. I think the answer is yes. We do want to live in love. We want to show up in love in our relationships. And I'm here to help with that a little bit, because maybe I needed to learn to do that. And maybe I teach those steps, that competency, because there are steps, actually, to deprogram. Okay. Going back to some of the parts I wanted to share with you on this meeting your cast. I talked earlier, I tried to make it sound exciting, the cast of characters within, and, perfectionist Patty, she's there, right? And, and my personal favorite, when I started my company, I really should have got advice, because I did not. And I did start writing to try to promote parts of my business, but it was Prosecutor Patty. And that's my own little personal nickname for her. And she shows up when she sees injustice, and she sits in the prosecutor seat. And sometimes her approach has maybe not been the approach that's going to lead to something productive and positive. So Prosecutor Patty she's still there, but she needs to learn to take a back seat once in a while. Or a lot. So I'm going to just kind of go through now, and I really invite you to get your pen. I've mentioned a few times to make sure that you have your pen, because I do want you to write down if any of these archetypes, which is based on, a history of observing human behavior and almost just kind of coding those behaviors into categories, and then like creating an archetype that helps us understand some of these behaviors. So I'm going to talk about that, because those archetypes are kind of a key to connecting more to yourself and to those that you spend time with, those that you love, those that you lead, those that you like. I like to focus on those things, the people you lead, love, and like. And yes, those who you tolerate. It's important to me personally and me professionally to seek where coherences are, where we can come together for acts of love and connection and forgiveness as an antidote to disconnection, an antidote to fear, an antidote to violence. And in my 30 years of working with people, I have come to the conclusion, oh, there's a big, beautiful bird right. Oh no, am I going to forget what I was? I've come to the conclusion. What was I saying? Oh, wow. How they say squirrel? Bird. I'm in this beautiful space surrounded by animals. Literally had a bobcat cross over in front of my window not that long ago. Yeah, so the conclusion that I've come to after working with people for 30 years and being a person for almost 50 in August, I'm turning 50. Yay, let's clap, celebrate. I've learned that, the number one tool that we have in our toolbox is to look in the mirror and really understand what we're seeing and what we need. And it's the antidote to violence out there is understanding what's going on in here. And it's noticing, is there any violence going on in here? Is it a hostile? Is it a hostile work environment in here? Is it a hostile place? Or is it a garden where beautiful things can grow? Is it a place that is being nurtured, being taken care of, getting its rest and its nutrients, its socialization, its novelty, its repetition, all of the things we need to wire our non-conscious programming so that we can show up consciously in the story of our lives? That reminds me when I grew up watching some soap operas with my mom. My mom watched soap operas. I think there was one called, or The Days of Our Lives, I think it was called. Those authors are authoring stories, so we got to author our own stories, switch off the consuming of stories and turn on the authorship of your own. So okay, so if we understand that there's sometimes different characters at play in our communication, sometimes we need to know them in order to connect to them, to connect to other people. So the first one, like I said, these are typical archetypes. You can look up archetypes and learn these pretty easily. And I'm not here to teach about those because, again, you don't need information. I'm not here to give information. There's enough of that. You can find this stuff out instantly. I'm here to provide practical tools once you're aware of some of these things so that you can take action to improve your health, your wealth, your relationship with yourself. Sounded your health, your wealth, and your relationship with yourself. Live right here. You heard it. Poetry in action. But it's true. You have to be accountable and responsible for your own health because, our systems are here and they're not always going to meet the needs. We know that. So what can we do? What's the agency that we have to take care of ourselves? So understanding parts of us helps. So the warrior is the first character that I'd like to identify that people may recognize. The warrior character or archetype, you're writing that down. Don't just write down the ones that may resonate for you, but jot down the names anyway, and then think about it later. Reflect on, is there somebody in my workplace who seems to be in this warrior archetype, or, oh my gosh, that's my dad, or that's me, these are just collection of behaviors that we see that, and this may sound out there, but in my mind, they're just mathematical equations that based on the environment that an organism has lived in, and the environment and the organism and the interaction, that's what creates these behaviors. So the warrior who says, get up, keep going. And, it's wonderful. And like we need the warrior, right? It's like going to battle. But it's not so helpful, right? Because all of these archetypes have strengths and then areas where we may be creating disconnection, right? That's the purpose of this podcast, is talk about connection, and we have to know disconnection. So when we are over identified, I would say, with that warrior archetype, is when we start treating, every situation like it's Normandy. It's a battle. It is like an epic battle. And that is a sign that perhaps you're over identified with that warrior. And I'm not going to get into the neuroscience of all of that right now, but just think chemicals, think brain chemicals, think reinforcing patterns and rewards that had happened when perhaps we were younger or not. And that these rewards can reinforce that identity. As there's the caregiver. Where are my caregivers out there? Who are my people? The caregiver. What does everybody need? How can I find out what everybody needs, and how can I make sure that I give it to them? That is kind of that caregiver archetype. Yeah, and just examples of that. Who's hungry? The snack maker. And I love the snack maker. Don't get me wrong with any of these. I am these, you are these, we are all these, or can be these, or we know people who are these, and we appreciate people who are these. This is not a podcast about judgment. It's a podcast about exploration and curiosity and learning. Remember the beginning, we're in the learner seat, and we are not knowers here. We're being curious. So the caregiver, did everybody get home okay? Is everybody okay? Are you okay? I'm okay. So there's a lot of seeking of okayness, and how can I, insert myself to make sure I'm helping with that okayness. Then there's the pleaser, which is, oh, absolutely. Yes, of course I'll do that for you. What? You won't be into work tomorrow and you want me to do your to-do list? Absolutely. No problem. Quite happy to do that for you. Oh, you need a dog sitter? Yeah, I can do that. Babysitting? No problem. What else? Who else did I put in here? I just wanted to go over a couple today to see if you could identify any of those, because they help with our ability to connect to ourselves and connect to others. So we've done the warrior, the caregiver, the pleaser. Here's one of my favorites, the judge. I like the judge. There's a lot of judges on social media, I think. I don't know. But I think there are a lot of judges on social media. So if you're looking for rightness and certainty, just go to social media and you'll find an entire cast of judges on social media. So the judge has the files, the records, the evidence, the dates, the transcripts. The judge can tell you about something embarrassing you did in 1997 with extraordinary accuracy. And then there's the rebel. When the rebel archetype has arisen in someone, they're going to buck the system. So they tend to do the opposite and don't tend to like rules. And like we know that doing the opposite of rules is not freedom. Like It's just not the case. So it's important to recognize when the rebel is constantly at loggerheads with everything, breaking every rule. That's a problem. That's a pattern. And it's important to recognize patterns in ourselves and stop focusing on them in other people. That's the point of this podcast, is not to be writing down all the names of all the people who are these archetypes. Please avoid that easy road pointing at and judgment of others when we're thinking about these archetypes, because that's not the point of this podcast. The point is to hold the mirror, right? The mirror is the number one tool that we have, that I've learned in all the work I've done and all the trainings. The answer is the mirror. What can I do? What's in my wheelhouse? What's outside my wheelhouse? Taking a breath, gaining the clarity to take the next best step for you, whatever that is. And again, you're the only one who knows what that is. Not a therapist, not a coach, not an optimization podcaster who's going to tell you all the 25 things you need to do to optimize your life. That stuff's helpful. It is, but it's also addictive. It's addictive to be consuming and not doing. So we're here to inspire agency. We're here, me, myself, and I. Being good. I'm going to move this chair. I think it would be good in the background. So we're here to inspire. We're inspiring ourselves. That's what I'm teaching. How can you feel into your body, connect with what matters, what's real, what's true, what might be an old program, or what I call a legacy program, which is like an archetype, maybe an old archetype. Oh, constant caregiver. I work with a lot of constant caregivers and I love them. We need them. I am them. And I also needed to learn how to care for myself, which is part of this podcast, is sharing that journey. Because if I had learned some of these things, maybe I would have made different choices. I don't live in the maybes. Quite content with where I am now. And let's share some of the stories that have helped us along the way. Right? That's what I think. Okay, I'll just go over maybe a couple more. The next one, the orphan. The one who remembers what it felt like to be excluded. I wonder if there's anyone who listens to this podcast who may remember at some point in their lives what it felt like to be excluded. My 20-year-old son just called me pick me an hour ago. I forget what it was. But they call me pick me a lot. And we didn't have that term. I don't think. It's just, it's real. The experiences that we have had that were painful, that were sad, that were embarrassing, that brought shame up in our bodies, those things often go unhealed and they play out in the archetypal behaviors sometimes. So much of what we're doing is a pattern that we don't even recognize as a pattern. So that's why I want to talk about some of these archetypes. And the more we understand them, the more we're going to understand ourselves. And then we can take more mindful, meaningful, intentional action from the driver's seat, from the author position. right? Versus the archetypes. And maybe I'm going to create my own archetype. I'd like to create my own archetype called the author, actually, because we're not these different versions of us. We're the observer of those versions. It's why I know about perfectionist Patty. If I am perfectionist Patty, how am I also observing her and knowing that I would like to love her a little bit differently and ask her if she could maybe step aside so I could start a podcast? Hey, could you maybe just stop sabotaging and just like let me just do it, you know? And sometimes that helps. Like when we can frame things as a story or as a conversation, once you've kind of identified the archetypes that are at play for you, things can get a little bit more clear. And that's the goal of this podcast, is helping you find more clarity on you. And so you have to take notes. You have to write some of these things down, you know? So do you remember being excluded? Do you remember a time when you were a kid, when you were young, and you felt rejected from the herd, from the group? Can you recall what that felt like in your body? Can you recall what it felt like in your mind? What that had you do next when you felt it? I know what I did. And we're not going to talk about that today, maybe down the road, but I invite you to connect with the orphan. You know, when we think about ourselves, that younger version of us is really why it's important. When you were rejected, when you were excluded, when you were forgotten or abandoned or unseen, when you'd hoped to be seen, you know, what comes up in my mind is taking something to someone that you cared about and wanted to show them, whatever that was, whether it was a piece of artwork or a poem or an idea, or I don't know. But a lot of young people have done that, and what they received back wasn't love. And so that shapes us. That shapes a human. And then if that happens, it just becomes kind of stackable and can become a patterned response. And without role models or education particular to those things, we then kind of shape this identity around that, which the story that your little brain told you when you were a kid might not be true. So this one is a difficult one because our nervous system kind of gets wired it does get wired in those younger years, but those painful experiences, you know, we don't sit with those and get a little bit curious and wonder, what was that like? And how does that relate to showing up today? You know, those are questions for us all to get curious about. And sometimes that shows up like that abandonment can show up when somebody doesn't respond to a text message. That's a really good example, like a 2026 example that can help people when they start to overthink, when the email doesn't come back, when you were brave and set a boundary or a text message and you're just kind of waiting for a rejection or abandonment. That's very, very common because the brain likes to tell a story from what it knew from the past. So it's predicting that. The brain is a predictive machine. Oh, this one's good too. I like this one. The lover. So the lover is, of course, beauty, music, nature, touch, food, sex, friendship, wonder. The lover wants to experience being alive. It's a good one. The trickster. Thank God for the trickster, the one who walks into the room where everybody is taking themselves far too seriously and says something inappropriate. Oh my gosh, that's me. I forgot. Yeah, that's a big part. That's a big part. I do enjoy the trickster. Yes. And I enjoy others who also like to step into the archetype of trickster in their lives to bring humor and liberate us a little bit. And in the work of mental health and addiction, which is often quite heavy and difficult, I forgot humor and I need to bring more humor in. And one of the things that I've noticed about humor with myself and with others is that it can be a balm for worry or anxiety or fear. Humor is often a way we've gotten through shit. I wouldn't swear on the podcast. I'm sorry, Dad, if you listen. But humor is what we use to get through difficult things. As healthcare workers, we often use humor to get through difficult times. And it is a good thing. And we have to be careful that we're not using it as an escape and as a way to disconnect from a felt experience that needs to be processed. I love a lot of comedians. Like, there's a lot of them. And if you learn about them and you learn about what they've been through, what they've survived in their life, you understand why this archetype is such a comfortable and beautiful one to sit in, and also one that can keep us from our authentic self if we're not careful, like all of them. I'm hoping you're getting interested and curious about archetypes, because that's the point of this. It's not to educate you in all of these and what they mean, but it's like, hey, do you know about archetypes? And they may be able to help you a little bit. The sage, who is like, the sage is the observer, the thinker, the one who wants to understand. The sage can become incredibly sophisticated at understanding absolutely everything while doing absolutely nothing. So some of these archetypes are used to hide behind because of fear. So that's why we have to understand fear, to turn the volume down on it so that we can connect to the truth, and then we get the clarity. Then we can make a map and take action for a plan. The dreamer, love the dreamer. I might be a bit of a dreamer. Anyone listening who knows me knows that. The dreamer can see a life that does not exist yet. That gets me into trouble. And that's okay, because then I have to adapt and learn and grow. And the dreamer is the one who's coming up with business ideas, who's dreaming of the most ideal relationship, who's dreaming of writing a book. You know, somebody who maybe wants to completely change their future. Really, the dreamer archetype is the one who, like, it's the beginning of possibility, because that's what dreams are. It's the beginning of possibility. What could it be like? If I was to start a podcast what could it be like? Could it be fun? Could it help my creative side express itself a little bit more? Could it create more connection in my life? Like, what is possible with a podcast? Who could I reach? When I started my company, I started online before all of the online teaching and online therapy, coaching, all the online work I had done before it was forced onto the world. So, I'm hoping one of the dreams of the podcast is to reach people from far away, an archetype that resonates with Patricia Auchnie. But the dreamer can spend 20 years beautifully imagining Tuesday and will never actually arrive there. And I suppose in 2026, this year, was me deciding I need to arrive fully and completely in my own life to become more of the author. And from the outside, people would say, look at all the things you've done and achieved. You've absolutely been the author. And I would say, hell yes. Yes, yes, yes. I have been the author 100%. And two things can be true at the same time, right? These archetypes that have made decisions for me and held me back and not allowed other archetypes to shine. Well, like, kind of tired of that. So that's why the podcast, that's why writing, that's why teaching, that's why my workshop. By the way, I have a workshop tomorrow night. I think I set it for 5:00. If you're interested in joining, go to my website. You can read more about that. It's a workshop on architecting, building, engineering, self-authorship, the steps to it. And we're going to get to a couple of those at the end because I said I was going to get to the 4 C's of connection. I wanted to go through some of these archetypes first so that you know what we're talking about. So I hope you've written some of these down. The last one, I saved the very best for last. The last archetype would be the one that I would work with the most as a private practice clinical therapist, working in addiction, mental illness, also in coaching, and certainly in workplaces. Yes. Yes, all you leaders out there who might be listening, all you senior leadership team, all you executives, all you HR specialists, you guys hold so much power, so much potential. And you also are led a lot by the protector archetype. And a lot of us are in that archetype most of the time and don't recognize it. So, because the protector, as it sounds logically, is there to keep you safe. The protector is like security. The protector remembers the stuff that happened. You might not remember some of the things that happened, but your protector has kept an account since grade school, since birth, basically, not grade school. But you might remember some things that happened in grade school that brought your protectors out and said, I'm never doing that again. Like maybe you wore a completely wild outfit to junior high for the first day of school. And it was very creative and included a hat that was pink. And there may have been blue high heels shoes involved, just really low ones. Like they were not that high. They were just like little tiny pumps. And I thought they went good. I thought everything looked we had cleaned out the attic at the farm And I found all these really cool things and I like put them all together and I thought I looked the bomb. I thought I looked really good. So the protector archetype remembers those times when things didn't go well. And then so we got to meet that part, right? The protector. So they don't want you to be embarrassed. They don't want you to get hurt. The protector remembers. They try to keep you in line. Don't start the podcast. Don't do that. Why would you do that? Don't write your thoughts. Why are you telling people what you think and dream? Don't embarrass yourself. Stay here where it's safe. Come on, stay here where it's safe. Do the things. Do the pattern things that we know. We like it there. Right? That's the protector. And that's the archetype I'm working with mostly in my professional world as a clinician and a coach and consultant. But guess what? It's the part I work with in my real life with myself and all my other relationships too, right? I just want to remind you that these archetypes are neither good nor bad. They just are. And that's what we're focusing on this podcast is not deciding, being the judge. Oh, that's a good one. That's a bad one. It is observing, being curious and noticing. And noticing is one of the key tools, right? Write that down. Noticing, becoming that observer, when certain behaviors you're doing might fall into particular categories. That's going to be helpful. That's the value of this particular podcast. Maybe you got to listen for an hour, probably wrap up soon because my kids are taking me to Gazoo's for a hamburger tonight up in Porter's Lake. And Gazoo's makes the best hamburgers. If you've not had a Gazoo burger, which is like, I feel like it has 3 patties. It maybe has 2. I don't know. But in the homemade chips, so good. I was actually going to change the time of this live and recording because I wanted to go sooner. But I was like, no, you committed to this. You told everybody you were going to do it and yourself. And I'm working on building self-trust. So stick to the plan. And I'm going to feel really good when this is done, I think. This is like in quotes, right? Something that you might say, oh, my judge is really loud today. My protector is terrified today. Don't do that live. Oh my gosh. I didn't do that because I've worked really hard with my protector to just let me do stuff. So my protector was like pretty quiet, low key today. The pleaser, my pleaser had me saying yes to the boss today because you want to please the boss. And caveat here, also safety. Sometimes we please, we fawn, we do these things because we need to stay safe and our nervous system is telling us to stay safe. To wrap up, these are some of the characters in the story of your life. So when we're looking at ourselves and we're trying to understand a little bit more, now you may have a little bit of a framework and go do your own research and flesh these out for yourself. But now you're going to start to connect with those a little bit more and understand them. And really, like through this live podcast and preparing, I took some notes. I was like, I want to create the author archetype. And maybe it already exists, but I thought that would be really cool to like actually construct an author archetype. And so like I've been trying to find a language for that. So the psychology of it, when I have a degree, an undergraduate in psychology, it gives you the basics, right? You understand what is metacognition, thinking about thinking. It's like you're aware of thinking. It's really just the ability to notice your own thoughts. I'm doing the dramatic pause so that you can maybe notice. So noticing is just like, if it's possible to just take a breath. Come into the present moment. And that version of you that is in the present moment, that is here right now. I call that version the author, because you're in it. You're not in performance. You're not being something else. You're just being. Let's kind of think about that and talk about that in the next episode, and think about this idea of being the author, being the authentic author of your life, the agentic self, the authentic self. What do we want to write more of into our lives? Most of us need more connection. Most of us need more connection to ourselves so that we can create a more loving environment in here, so we can do more good things and have a quality of life that is healthy, wealthy, and connected. Wealthy in love, wealthy in experiences, and having the desire to give back to others. How beautiful is that? I think that's a pretty cool thing. So I do have a workshop coming up, The Mechanics of Self-Authorship, which is tomorrow evening. And if you're interested in that, let me know. I'll wrap up with the 4 C's that I was going to tell you about, and that can be something that you can think about. And maybe you can start figuring out a little bit more about your, what I call your internal cast. You know, if you're the author, there's a cast of characters. So I kind of want you to get to know the cast of characters that are within you, the ones we went over. And you can also do your own research on the archetype. The 3 C's are to help you connect more with your inner author, the true author, so that you can have more agency in your life. So the 4 are: 1, collect. That's easy. Collect. I'll write that down. Number 1. Number 2, code. Number 3, curate. And number 4, create. So for connection, my little map is about collecting the data. So that's what's going on inside your body. The signals, the thoughts. Okay. What are you thinking about? Jot some of that down. What are you doing? What are the actions you're taking? Jot some of that down. What are you saying? What are you speaking? In your relationships with your boss, with your colleagues, with your partner, your wife, your husband. Okay, so thoughts, words, and actions. Start collecting. That's collecting, right? If you're curious about more connection in your life, more clarity, getting to know yourself, and picking up the pen to be the author, you need to take a scientific approach. So collect the data on you. I've talked about this before in previous lives and podcasts. So collecting the data, code the data, code it into themes. Okay. Find the themes and the things you're doing, the things you're thinking, saying, and don't forget the things you're not saying and not doing. All of that's data and information. Okay. So we're going to collect it. We're going to map it out. We're going to have a look at it, and it's going to paint a picture, and you're going to see the authentic picture if you collect good data, like the real data. Garbage in, garbage out. My tech people will get that. Curate. So now that we've collected the data, we've coded it, we've painted a picture. We're sitting in the truth of that. We're not saying it's bad. We're not saying it's good. We're just noticing. What's the picture? And then the curating starts. What do I want more of? What do I need more of in my life right now? What do I need less of? So actually curate those parts. More of this, less of that. You know, it might be down the road, whatever. Engage with your dreamer archetype for this section. Challenge yourself. Vulnerability means dreaming. It really is. You gotta, to dream is to be vulnerable. To love is to be vulnerable. To live is to be vulnerable. Okay, so we're curating. After we've collected, we've noticed, we've collected, we've coded. Now we're curating. You got to write all this down. You can't do this in here. You got to write this stuff down, which makes it real, right? And then it's create. The last one is create. Of course it's create, right? Because creating is action. So we're going to create the life we want to have through action. You don't get there without taking action, without going live, hitting live, recording a podcast live on YouTube with like loose notes and not really knowing 100% what I was going to do. I hope it adds value. But I wanted to show the process, the creative process, the curious process, the vulnerability process, the not knowing, also in learner mode, how to do all this. I still don't know if anybody's even heard it. I could be live right now on YouTube for the last hour and a half and none of it's recorded. I have no idea, but I hope that it is. And I hope this adds some value. And if it doesn't, well, it was a great practice session and I'm going to go enjoy a hamburger. So the 4 C's, okay, jot those down. And the goal, of course, is more joy in our life. We want to find more joy, cultivate more loving connection in our lives. And my workshop tomorrow night is a beginning to that. We'll dig deeper into what all of this is in the workshop. And hopefully that's enough to get you going, get you started for free to understand the archetypes, understand connection to yourself, and those 4 C's to start collecting the data so you can engineer and be the architect of the archetype. Oh, I love that. Be the architect of the archetype. The author. Be the architect of the archetype, the author. Go do that. I'm doing that. Join me. Free subscribe. Support this work. The podcast will be much better because it will be more concise and cutting all the nonsense out of the live. I hope this process works. I think it was fun and pretty cool. And so thank you so much. Finally, I just want to say thank you to those who have subscribed. I think I'm at 113 souls. I can't even believe that. Like, I cannot believe 113 souls have said, my husband can't believe that. My family can't believe that. 113 people want to subscribe to hear me. He does not get it. Neither do my kids, but that's okay. Anyway, this was a lot of fun. If you watched, thank you. I can't wait to see if it actually recorded. That'll be really cool if it did. And then we'll see what product comes out of the podcast platform and how it edits it to a clean version to upload to Spotify. So if you get a chance, please free subscribe to Spotify, to my Substack, the Agentic Self podcast, and I'll see you here next time. Thanks, everyone.